Hello everyone, and welcome to this video on setting up SQL Server transactional replication using a remote distributor. What's meant by a remote distributor is that the distributor is installed on a separate server than the publisher. A lot of times people will install the publisher and distributor on the same machine. Here is a way to do it where the distributor is on a separate machine. This is also on a real network with a domain, with Active Directory, etc. So I'm going to show you how to install it with a proper network involved. So there will be 3 different servers. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? Alright, here's my setup. I have 3 different servers actually running. This is server 1 here, server 1. Here's server 2, here's server 3. Each one is running Windows Server 2019 and SQL Server 2017 Enterprise. Okay, the first server will be my publisher, the second server will be my distributor, and the third server will be my subscriber. The first server also contains the domain or Active Directory. I know SQL Server should not be installed on a domain controller, but I don't have space for another machine to show on the screen, so it's on the same thing, but nothing changes. Okay, so I'm going to show you also how to do this with proper security settings. Okay, so that you do the proper security and lockdown of your system. So let's start with what's needed with transactional replication. SQL Server will use 3 agents. One's called the snapshot agent. This snapshot agent is responsible for the initial snapshot of the data in the schema and for any ongoing snapshots that you want to take. Okay, the log reader agent, that one's the one that reads the transaction logs and sends those that are marked for replication onto the distributor. So the snapshot agent runs here on the publisher. Log reader runs on the publisher and sends it over to the distributor, sends all the transactions over to the distributor. The distribution agent is responsible for moving the snapshots and the transactions from the distributor to the subscriber. So the distribution agent will run and send the transactions down to the subscriber. Now a lot of people install replication and they just give everyone all rights to all of these agents, and that's a bad way of doing things because you open up your network and servers to hacking and everything. So what you want to do is give minimum requirements for each of these agents. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so because I'm on a network, I don't want to use local user accounts. I want to use all my accounts from the domain. So first thing I'm going to do is go over to your domain controller, which happens to be my publisher, server 1. I'm going to pull up the server manager. I'm going to go to tools. I'm going to go to Active Directory users and computers and add 3 new users here. Now if you don't have access to the domain controller to add users, just ask someone in your IT department to do this. So you're going to go to users, and you're going to right mouse click, new user. Okay, the first user I want to do, so these users are going to be what the those replication agents I talked about are going to be using. So I'm going to create a user for each one of those replication agents. So replication snapshot. So you create replication snapshot. So notice I'm on my domain, so I'm going to create these in my domain. So next, give a password for this user. And I'm going to take off that first choice and have the 2 middle choices. So user cannot change password and password never expires. So make sure you uncheck that one, the top one. Okay, go next and finish. So that user has been created. Let's create 2 more users, because remember we have 3 replication agents. So that's the snapshot. Let's do one let's do one for replication snapshot. Let's do one for the distribution. So we'll replicate distribution. Go next. Put a password in. Take off that option. Check these two options. Go next and finish. One more user has got to be added. So I've done distribution snapshot. I need the log reader. I'm just copying this, placing it up into the full name. Go next. Put a password in. Check off that. Make sure these two are checked. Next. Finish. Okay, so I got my 3 users. Domain users. These users are going to be used for the replication agent. So I'm done that. Everything I need to do in the network is done now on the domain. So now when you set up replication, the first thing you do is set up the distributor before the publisher. You could add in, do the subscriber first if you want also, but I do the distributor first. Okay, so first thing you got to do on the distributor is create a directory to hold your snapshots and data that get transferred across that are going to go to the subscriber. So I'm just going into the Explorer, and I'm going to create a new folder or directory, and I'm just going to call this replicate data. Then what you have to do is share it and give it rights to those 3 users you just created. So you're going to right mouse click on that directory, properties, go to the sharing tab, and then go to advanced sharing and share this folder. Okay, and then permissions, you're going to add. Make sure you're on the domain, not on the local server. Make sure you're looking at the domain so you can pick up the domain users. I'm going to go advanced just so I can look for them. You can put a filter in here to filter them if you have lots and lots of people on your domain. You can just filter by REPL. Highlight all 3, go OK. Now they're added, go OK. And then what you want to do is give them rights. The distribution user only needs read rights. The log reader only needs read rights, and the snapshot needs full control. Okay, go apply, go OK, apply, OK. Now go to the securities tab, and we got to add them in here also. So go to edit, add. Make sure you're on the local domain, not the local computer. Go advanced. Find now I'm using. You can type them in if you want, but I'm lazy. Distribution to snapshot. Get them all. OK. And again, you have to give these guys rights. Okay. So distribution agent or user only gets read rights. The log reader only gets read rights, and the snapshot gets full control. Apply. You can just double check that everything got saved properly. Yep. Go OK. Now, before you leave here, go back to the sharing tab. Now notice I'm in C drive replicate data. That's my directory. But when you go back to sharing the network path, copy that. Whoops. Copy that whole path. You need to use the UNC path when you're setting up the replication. You can't type in C:\replicate data. You have to use the full UNC path. Okay, so I just copy that and I'll use it later. So now I can close this, I can close this, and now I can start up my replication, or start installing my replication. So on the replication, right mouse click, configure distribution. Now I do want to point out, if you don't have this option, that means you did not install it when you installed SQL Server. When you install SQL Server, one of the options is to install replication. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a video I have online that install of SQL Server with the BI tools. Now these aren't BI tools, but it does show you how to install the replication. You also need SQL Server agent running on your machines. If that's not running, like if it doesn't have the little play symbol, right mouse click and start it. Or go to the configuration manager and start it up. SQL Server agent has to be running. Okay, so replication again, right mouse click, configure distribution. The wizard pops up, go next. It says, which server do you want to use as the distributor? Well, this is the server I want to use. It's called server 2, so I'm leaving that checked off. So go next. Your snapshot folder. This is that folder you just created. So I'm going to put in the path now. That's server 2. That you have to use the UNC path. Do not put C:\replicate data. Use the full UNC path. Go next. It's going to create a database called for the distribution changes and everything. I just leave it called distribution. This happens to be where I store my tables for this example. Obviously yours will be different, so just leave the distribution database name the same. Go next. Now it says which server is going to be your publisher. Server 2 will not be my publisher because I'm using a remote distributor. This server 1 is going to be my publisher. So uncheck that, go to add SQL Server Publisher, pick the server. It's on a network, so I go browse for more, network servers. Now it's going to scan the network and look for all my SQL servers. And if you have a large network, this could take a little while. My network's pretty small, and there it is. Server 1 is the one that's going to be my publisher. I'm going to use Windows authentication to get in there. So server 1, it's also going to use the distribution database that was set up or created in the last step. Go next. A password to get in from the publisher. So just type your password in. Remember this password because you got to use it later when you set up the publisher. Next. Configure distribution will turn this server into a distributor, or you can also at the same time generate a script file, so a TSQL script. The only difference, when it creates this script file, it won't put in any of the passwords. You'll have to go in and put those in yourself. Okay, next, and finish. And if everything's working, then these will all check off in a second. Good. It's created. So let's just double check that. So I'm going to refresh this databases, refresh, because remember I told it to create a database called distribution. So if you go under system databases, you should have a new database under your system databases called distribution. Now what you have to do is give rights to this database for those users that you created in your domain over here. So go to the server security and create new logins for the server. New login. Login name. Let's search this location. Make sure it's the domain, not a local, because it's not a local user, it's a domain user. Go OK. I'm going to search for it. So who do I want to find first? Well, whoever comes up first will do. Do it in order. Distribution. Go OK. OK. Then go to the user mapping and check off the distribution database, and then give them in the role of DB owner. Okay, go OK. New login. Do the next one. Search. Change your location to the domain. Advanced. Find. Now we can do the log reader. Go to user mappings, check off distribution, owner. Go OK. New login. We need to add the snapshot person. Advanced. Find now. replication snapshot, okay, user mapping, distribution database, owner, okay. All right, so we're set up now. The distributor is set up. So the next thing to do, I'm going to go over to the subscriber and set it up now. I like to set it up way before I do the publisher, and you'll see why later. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is I'm expanding on the publisher. This database, AdventureWorks 2017, I want to replicate over to this server. So if you go under databases here, there's no user-defined databases. I'm going to create one now. You don't have to, but you'll see why I do it, because I want to add rights to this database before this happens. Otherwise I have to do it in a different order. So it's much easier to do it this way. So right mouse click, databases, create a new database that this replication is going to go into. So you could call it the exact same name, but I'm not going to. I'm going to call it replicate AW test. Okay, go OK. Now what we have to do is give one person the rights to this. So under the server security, new login, search, change your location because it's one of those domain users, advanced, find, and the one you want to give rights to is the distribution. Replicate distribution, go OK, user mappings to that database, you just create it and put ownership, make them an owner, I mean, okay, go OK, there, subscriber setup. There's nothing more on the subscriber. Now we can go over to the publisher and start setting it up. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is add the security to that database that we want to replicate. So I'm going to the server security tab, expanding that, logins. Right mouse click, new login. I need to add those 3 users that we created in the domain. Make sure you're looking at the domain. Go advanced and find those 3 users. We got to do them one at a time. Distribution, go OK. And then user mapping, check off the AdventureWorks or any database you want to replicate, and then check off owner, go OK. This is just like we did on the distribution server. Search, and replication log reader, user mapping to that database you want to replicate, make them an owner role, and one more of the snapshot. Okay, snapshot. User mapping, AdventureWorks, DB owner, go OK. There, that part's set up. So we got the security now. Now what we can do is start creating our replication. So right now we have no publications or any subscriptions. Okay, so expand your replication, go to local publications, right mouse click on that and go new publication. Wizard pops up. Next, which database we want to replicate. Basically we only have one, so next. What kind of publication we want transactional publication. Next. And then what articles we want to publish. Okay, so the great thing about replication is they say the way we describe it is the scope is at the table level, meaning if I want to replicate the entire database, I'd check everything off. If I just want to replicate a certain table, I can replicate one table. But I can also go into that table and replicate just certain fields or columns in that table. So you got a lot of flexibility with replication. Whereas log shipping and mirroring, the scope is at the database level. You have to ship or mirror the whole database. Replication lets you go right down to the table level. So I don't have to replicate the entire database. Okay, so I could pick certain, when I do certain columns, say you want to ship replicate a table for payroll over here, but maybe one of the columns in there is everyone's salary, the salary column. And I don't want people over on who have access to this server to see that. I could uncheck that one column, and that piece of information won't get replicated. So no one over here, when they're running reports or doing anything, will see people's salary. So that's great. You can also, okay, so you can pick any table. So let's go here. I'm going to just pick a few person tables. And let's do 5 of them. Let's go up here, address. Let's look at this article properties for a second. The properties on this article table called address, you can see, you can go in here, you can have it do what's to do if there's new stuff over here. Do you overwrite it? Do you update it? Do you append it? Do things like that. You can check, notice it doesn't carry over the foreign key constraints. If you wanted to do that, put it to true. So you can go through all those to see that it does what you want it to do. Okay, we're not changing anything. So I'm going to just check off 5 of these tables. Those are the only 5 tables I want to replicate. So over here I should end up with 5 tables, not all of them. Go next. Then you get to filter your data. So maybe you want to, say you're sending sales data to 3 or 4 different servers, different subscribers, one for North America, South America, Asia, and Europe. You can filter, so each server just gets the sales data for their region. So that's great. So if you got the data in the table for regions, you can filter, do a select statement to filter it out. So you can send sales data based on year, whatever you want. So, but we're not going to add any filtering, but you can do that. So next. So as you can see, replication has a lot of flexibility. So I want to create my snapshot immediately. I don't want to schedule it to go at another time. I'm just going to create the snapshot immediately. Next. Now, which agent am I going to use? Go to Security Settings. Do not click Run under SQL Server Agent Service Account. If you do, then it has full access, and we just defeated our purpose of locking down these servers with all those accounts we just created. So this is the snapshot. So we got a user for the snapshot. That was called Replicate It Snapshot. And we know what rights he has because we gave it rights. Put the password in for that user. Notice here you have to put the domain. My domain is my. Go OK. Now for the log reader, this is checked off to use the same agent. No, I don't want to do that because the log reader doesn't need the same rights as the snapshot agent. The log reader only needs read rights, which we gave over here. So security settings, change this to log reader. Put in the password. Go OK. So we've got them. Just double check I spelt everything right. Go next. Create the publication. Again, if you want a script file, but remember the passwords don't get put in. You'll have to put those in yourself. Next. Give the publication a name. Pub AW test. Finish. And this should go through. Depends how fast your computers are and how many articles you're putting. And we're done. So now let's just make sure everything's working. Right mouse click on that publication and go view snapshot agent status. You see it's going here, so that's good news. If that just sits there and says starting agent, something like that, could be a few things wrong. You could have put wrong passwords in, or this has not been activated for replication. So what you would do is go over to the distributor and run some queries. I'll go over here now and just run a query to show you. So you're going to type in, I'm just going to paste this in. You can type in exec sp help dist publisher. So you're going to run this stored procedure to run. And what you do is you'll see your publishing servers and scroll along there. This column here that says active has to be a 1. If it's a 0, this snapshot agent will just continuously say trying to start, something like that. I've seen this so many times it drives me crazy. So what you have to do from the distributor is to activate this server. So I've proven that that's active, but let's pretend that was a 0, so it wasn't active. So then you create a new query that goes like this. Let me expand that so we can read it a bit. So you're going to run the procedure again, this one called changed dist publisher, and then you're going to at publisher, and you're going to change this to your publisher name, or yeah, the server. Mine's called server 1. Then you're going to put a comma, then you're just going to set a new property, at property equals active, comma, value or at value equals true. And you'll run that, and that will turn on this server to be active, and then this will run just fine. Okay, so if you get that message that just keeps saying I'm trying to run, run this first to see that your server is active, and then run that other query I just showed you to activate it, and everything will work, if that's the problem. The other problem might be you put wrong passwords in all along. Okay, so this is run now. That's cool. Let's close that. Now what we want to do is to create an actual subscription. Tell it where we want to send this stuff. So the publication has created our snapshot and everything and done its thing. So I'm going to right mouse click now on this publication and go new subscription. Wizard pops up. And which publication? Well, I'm on that publication, so it's going to highlight it. So go next. And then where do you want to run the agents? To do a push or pull? We're going to do a push, because what we want to do is have the distributor do all the work of pushing the transactions to the subscriber. If you put out the distributor on the publisher, then the publisher is doing its job plus the distributor job plus doing, you know, all the transactional work that the database and the server could be pretty busy. So what you might want to do is take some of the workload off of this server by doing a pull subscription, which says the subscriber will decide and pull the transactions down at its time. So it offloads the work from the distributor. You still have to set up a distributor though. Okay, so we're going to leave it as a push subscription to have server 2 push down the transactions to the subscriber, because we have a remote distributor. It's just doing one thing and one thing only, and that's its job. Okay, this is great when you have lots of subscribers, different servers, and everything like that. Go next. Choose one or more subscribers. Okay, so where's your subscriber? Well, it's not server 1, it's server 3. So I'm going to add a subscriber. Pick server 3. Windows authentication. Go next. And which database do you want to put all your transactions? Where do you want to replicate? Well, we created one over here, you remember, called this one. Okay, if you didn't create it, you could have went new database and typed it in, but then you'd have to go over here, back later, set the rights, all that. I just like to do it ahead of time. Just makes life easier. So that one's done. Go next. Now which basically account do we run under? Well, this one is the replication distribution agent user account. Password. Okay. Go OK. So we're good there. Go next. Run continuously, or you can schedule it. Okay. So we want to run continuously. What that means is every time, it's just monitoring constantly. Every time I do something to this database, it will immediately gets sent over to the distributor, and then the distributor will send it down to the subscriber, basically almost in real time. Okay, that's what we want. Go next, and we're fine. Next, create the subscription, generate a script, but again, passwords don't get put in, and finish. And let's see if it's working. Keep our fingers crossed. One thing about replication, if you make a mistake somewhere along the line, you don't find out till the last step. Okay, close. Let's see what happened over here. I'm going to refresh this. Go to open my databases. There's my user-defined database. Let's expand that. Let's expand the tables. Oh yes, I've got some tables there. Great. So let's see if there's any data in here. Right mouse click, select top 1000. I'm going to go back to this publisher database also. I'm going to show you something. Tables, expanding. That was the person address table. So right mouse click, select top 1000. I'm going to show you here. This line here, I've already changed it from the default data. Okay, so here's the data that was in this table database. Here's the exact copy now over here. Let's show you the replication working. Let's go to the publisher and change. Oops, not thing. I want to go edit top 200 rows of this table. And I'm going to edit this data and see it change over here. So here I have Napa Road. Let's change it back to the default, which was Court. Okay, there, I've changed it. Let's execute this query again. Got to give it time. I went too fast. Let's close that. Close that one. Make sure it ran. It's still going. There we go. So it went. Okay, execute. Now it's to Court. See that? It changed back. Now, the other thing, the online manual tells you to do this, or it says you can't do this. If I go to tables, person, where's that person table gone? Address, right here. Expand that. I go to columns. I want to add a new column. I'm going to show you two things. One other one is pretty important after this. So if I go add a new column called test column, okay, and I save that. Okay, and now I go back over here. I'll refresh this just to make sure it gets updated quicker. Tables, columns. You see this one? It put in the test column. So the manual or books online tells you that you can't use SSMS to do schema changes for this, but it does work. So they tell you you should do TSQL and everything, but it does that. Now there's one other thing I want to show you that books online tells you you have to do when you're setting up replication. So when I have my publication here, if I right mouse click on the publication, go to properties, and then go to the publication access list. Okay, now this part is told to you in the books online that you have to do. Notice everything worked with transactional replication without me doing this part. Notice it says here, the publication access list specifies the logins with permissions to create and synchronize subscriptions. Notice I didn't do anything here though. The books online says I should have went add and add my distribution user in there, okay, to make it all work, and go OK. Now, everything works with transactional replication if you forget to do that. If you do merge replication and you forget to do that step, it will not work. You must go to the public access list and add that user in. Okay, so if you're doing merge, it won't work. If you're doing transactional, it will. I don't know why it works with transactional. Now, even though the Books Online says you have to do it, so now it's been like that for many generations of the versions of SQL Server. Now, I don't know if that's a bug. So what I recommend is you put that in anyways all the time, because if it is a bug and they fix it in the future, all your replication will break. It'll stop working without that in there. So that will be a hard thing for you to probably figure out. So I recommend you put that in at all times, okay? Just to be on the safe side, even though it works. It won't work in merge replication if you leave that out. Anyways, that's it, guys. It all set up with a remote distributor and on a real network. Okay, so if you like this video, please click on like, and if you want to be notified of new videos, click on the bell icon. And as always, I really appreciate you subscribing to the channel. All right, guys, have a great day and take care.